I'm Andrew Rutt, CEO of MyMeds&Me, a company that provides a digital solution for the capture, processing and management of drug safety data. And it's great to be with you on this virtual conference. So if we start with the theme, we've said there's a coming storm. So what the pending COVID-19 vaccination campaign means for all of us around safety reporting, analysis and communication, I think it's something we need to consider very carefully. So I'd like you to join me on a journey through how this COVID-19 vaccination program or programs will affect PV operations, strategies for companies, and indeed our own world across the whole biopharmaceutical industry. So for me, there are three areas that will challenge our PV systems, and I think they include the following. The first is the enormous volume of adverse event reports that could be generated in a very short time for both the vaccines, but importantly for all the other co-administered products. The second is the speed and the effort with which the regulators and the broader public will expect companies to collect, analyze, and ultimately act on the data. And finally, the potential changes in the relationships with regulators and expectations for PV operations during this pandemic and the treatments that arise from it, but also into the foreseeable future. Just as we're seeing changes in other parts of the work world, I think we'll see major change in how we operate as a PV enterprise across the pharmaceutical industry. So let us now look at the COVID-19 vaccination landscape from development through to post-marketing. And what I've tried to do is map out some of the challenges that we are seeing. And if we start from where we are today, and you can see that globally, whichever country you're in, whether you're in the United States, Europe, or Asia Pacific, or even Latin America, there's huge pressure from the public and from our political leaders to essentially to get this problem solved. There's a huge amount of effort and resources going into that across the pharmaceutical industry. Indeed, reputations are rising, but the vaccine is really perceived as a magic bullet. And this has led to extremely rapid development of new vaccine classes, for instance, the mRNA class, where our knowledge base is still very thin. Development cycles have been shortened so that the period from preclinical to market authorization has been compressed into less than 1 year. And given the fact that almost everyone will require vaccination to achieve herd immunity, mass vaccination will follow an exponential curve with huge numbers of subjects being immunized simultaneously. Any risks related to the vaccine therefore will be amplified given the numbers exposed until those risks, and indeed until those risks are identified and mitigated. Finally, this is the stuff of social media, where rumors and anti-vaxxers will use any data to ruin the reputations of the vaccine companies and of pharma. And I think the thesis, and I'll try and share with you some of the numbers later on, is so you can see where adoption doubles, say, every 10 days, the adoption of the vaccine, that is, then every 10 days saved from the time a serious or significant adverse event that results in some form of patient harm is mitigated, reduces that risk by 50%. So if we move into now the next area, as we plan for mass vaccination, what can we learn from published data? And if we go to the program that was run in Bangladesh for a measles vaccine campaign, where 33.5 million children received that vaccine over a period of 3 weeks in a highly organized and targeted campaign. Now remember, this is a well-known vaccine, it's not in a COVID environment, so people didn't have to use social distancing to vaccinate. But essentially we're talking about roughly 1 million people or million children being immunized each day. So if the same were done in the United States, this would mean to get 70% of the population covered, or about 230 million, that would require 230 days. And you can see the curves here in how that adoption rises. But remember here, we're moving from highly select groups of patients or volunteers in the phase 3 trials, usually about 30,000 people, to a highly diverse population in terms of ethnicity, background disease, or even background medications. So recognizing that vaccination will probably start gradually, the scaling after say a couple of months, will have to be huge. And clearly, where multiple doses have to be administered, the logistical challenges will be even greater. So this would necessitate, depending on whether it's 1 or 2 doses, and you can see the color coding indicates that, on average, 1 to 3 million immunizations daily. On average, that is. So as the months progress, it will be much more than that. And that depends on whether it's a single dose or a multiple vaccine dose. And you can see the graph at the bottom, which illustrates a scale up in terms of millions of people over a period of months. And that indicates that initially fairly slow uptake, and then kicking in after perhaps 6 to 8 weeks when the logistics are sorted, and also where actually the data hopefully has come in about how those initial millions have responded. So now let's move to how this impacts adverse event reporting volumes, which I think is the business of the folks around the call. So what I want to do is illustrate this, and it's a graphic, and again, the graphic will be wrong, but it's trying to illustrate, based on certain assumptions and certain volumes, what a number of adverse event reports might come through. So let's assume if we ramp up vaccination over the first 4 months and take a reporting rate that's published, and GSK did a very nice publication on Shingrix, which mirrors an older population where reporting rates versus vaccine administration were 1 in 1,000 vaccinations. So that gives us volumes after about 4 months, just in the United States, based on these numbers of vaccinations, of around 100,000 or perhaps 150,000, depending on the impact of multiple doses on adverse event reporting. Now, given public interest, given media scrutiny, given social media activity, reporting rates may well be higher. And therefore, we have to prepare our systems to scale, and scale significantly. So what are our current adverse event processes like? So if we can move forward. Now, this is a very crude illustration of our current systems, which is basically a patient experiences an event. They usually go to some form of intermediary, either via phone, go to their doctor, send an email, and then that information is passed on to the pharmacovigilance teams. Question will be, will anyone even know which vaccine they've received? Hopefully they will, but we have to assume that there will be multiple vaccines circulating in the programs. So not only is this process not scalable, but it's also error prone and fails to link the details of the vaccine to the subject. So what might a PV system look like that would be slightly more able to deal with the challenges and the volumes that will occur during a mass vaccination program? So my belief, and I think many others in the field now would endorse this, is that to enable the PV system to scale in a meaningful way, there has to be a left shift. And by that, I mean a shift to enable patients and their carers, or subjects and their carers or friends, relatives, to enable them to report directly through the web or mobile. And only in this way will we be able to deal with the challenges of vaccination, or the volumes of vaccinations. I think the second part of that is that vaccination centres will have to be equipped to provide subjects with the details of which vaccine they've received. Have they received, an mRNA vaccine or a more traditional vaccine? Which dose did they receive? And this can be done through simple cards with the details of the vaccine, with labels, or 2D barcodes or web links provided to those subjects, so that they have the ability to understand which product they received and what to do if they experience an adverse event. And my belief is they should report it directly and digitally, so that we receive that data in real time and can act upon it. Secondarily, I think in the grey boxes you can see, to harmonise any remaining adverse event data that's coming through the traditional channels. And here in the UK, 13% of people in the country do not have a smartphone. So they will probably have to report, even if they wanted to, they would have to report now through call centres or more traditional means. So I believe that those teams operating in call centres or in local affiliates would still need to be equipped with the same digital platforms that the patients have, so that the data can be captured in the same standardized, consistent digital format. And obviously such solutions then streamline the processes. They eliminate manual steps in the case processing teams and feed the data direct as an E2B file, available immediately, essentially in real time for analysis once the data's hit the safety database. So let's move now to the assessment of benefit risk. And I think, as we look at clinical trials, obviously we're looking at essentially have immune responses occurred in a relevant number of subjects, and also have significant safety issues been identified. But our boundaries of knowledge are very, very thin during those studies, as we've highlighted, given the limitations in terms of sample sizes, but also in terms of selection. The selection of subjects for trials tends to be rather weller people than those who will receive the vaccine in the real world. So the risk and benefit of medicines is individual, and I think this is the important thing that we should all consider: is the vaccine, just as the COVID-19 virus acts very differently in all of us, the vaccines will operate very differently across all of us. And this is influenced by our background genetics, our environment, our lifestyle, including the medications that we take. And those medications could be, for say, rheumatoid arthritis, where we have an immune disorder, or psoriasis, or medications for type 2 diabetes or hypertension. And there has been data already in the literature around various antihypertensives having a positive or negative action with respect to COVID-19. Clearly, all of us want to be in the yellow box with the greatest benefit and the least risk. However, as with COVID-19 itself, it's very likely that some people will suffer immunological reactions driven by, say, for instance, their HLA profiles or other diseases that they're already suffering from. So my belief is that it's an imperative that we collect the data on the safety and risks of these vaccines very rapidly and very accurately, and analyze that data very quickly to enable rapid risk mitigation actions for our future vaccinees. So if we move on to how we summarize some of the points that we've gone through here. So my overarching belief is that the exponential scale-up of mass vaccination requires us to focus on patient safety versus simple reporting or reporting to regulators. The process of reporting shouldn't be our goal here. The collection of meaningful data and use of that data to protect patients is what we're about. And importantly, what we're dealing with in largely across a population is well people. So we're immunizing huge numbers of well people, and therefore risks will be, risks for them could be rather unacceptable in certain circumstances. So the 4 key principles that I believe must govern our operations are: first, to obtain and process robust and relevant safety data quickly from as many affected individuals as possible, to get that data fast and get good data. The second part is make that safety data available immediately for aggregate analysis and in real time. The third is to generate meaningful insights and for prompt action and for issue resolution. And then quickly and easily scale and support multiple language and geographies. Yes, we're talking at World Drug Safety in North America. Even in North America, other languages are prevalent, so Spanish would be important. As we look north to Canada, you've got French, and now you move to Europe and Asia Pacific and Latin America. It's imperative that we cover the global languages with the same standard digital solutions as we would for the various components or the various flavors of the English language. So all of these 4 areas require a global solution that begins with obtaining meaningful data and patient insights in real time. So let's now go to our conclusion. And for me, this is about the sort of elements of integrity and honesty and transparency. And I think if we look at the COVID-19 research landscape and how much money and effort's being poured into that, and a lot of that is probably not the best science at the moment, I believe we have to conduct ourselves with integrity and with provide transparency to those who are ultimately looking to us to solve this major healthcare crisis. So to me, the COVID-19 mass vaccination program can be actually viewed as a mass experiment, given the limited information at market authorization. I believe it's essential that the data is collected fast, it's analysed fast, and insights are communicated back to the community fast. Operating at the highest levels of integrity and transparency will ensure that these very challenging and much needed mass vaccination programs succeed. So thank you very much for your time and attention. And I believe we've had questions throughout, but thank you, and we'll close at this point.